Welcome to Walk the World's podcast. My name's Rachel, and this is the podcast where we step beyond the veil to take a look at some of those little known and long lost urban legends and spooky stories. This is the podcast where it's also Halloween every day of the week. This time we're going to Dudley in the West Midlands of England. Dudley is approximately 26 miles from Birmingham and has a rich history of industry, including being one of the birthplaces of the Industrial Revolution. These days, industry is mostly gone and the town has a handful of tourist attractions, including the 13th century Dudley Castle and Dudley Zoo, which contains a number of listed buildings. The Black Country Living Museum is close by and is an open-air museum which gives an in-depth look at the history of the area. There's also the Dudley Tunnel, which may sound like something dreamed up by the internet to give the town something to laugh at. In fact, the Dudley Tunnel is a 3,000 metre long canal tunnel which is only accessible by boat due to there being no towpath. It's the second longest canal tunnel in the UK, with the Standedge Tunnel being the longest. But we're not here to talk about listed buildings, nor museums, nor tunnels. We never are. In 2007, a series of bizarre sightings began to take place over this Black Country town. A strange triangular craft was seen haunting the skies above the area. Now, the UK has a history of giving stupid names to either events or objects. Probably the most famous incident took place in 2016 when the Natural Environment Research Council asked members of the public to suggest and vote on names for their new ship. A BBC presenter suggested the name Boaty McBoatface, which, as you can imagine, quickly became the popular choice. Because the UK and the internet at large love anything a little bit silly, this was the name that eventually won the poll. The name wasn't used on their ship. That instead became the RSS David Attenborough. However, one of the ship's autonomous underwater vehicles does carry the name Boaty McBoatface. You can also track a fleet of ice gritting machines. Stationed across the country, local councils have been allowing the public to name them, and of course they're as silly as you can get, including, but not limited to, Gritney Houston, Alexander the Grit, Gritty Gritty Bang Bang, Bear Chills, Walter the Salter, Roger Spreaderer and Gritalica. So it was no surprise that the wave of Dudley UFO sightings would get an equally silly name. Welcome to the tale of the Dudley Dorito. So if you've listened to the podcast about the Cannock Chase portal, this event gets a minor mention in there because Cannock Chase is just bonkers all on its own. But Dudley is relatively nearby. And I'm assuming that everybody is going to know what Dorito is. If you're one of the few people that don't, Doritos are triangular shaped potato chips. They're essentially a brand named nacho, I believe. So the first report of this mysterious triangular craft was published by the Express and Star on November 30th, 2007. The newspaper said a flurry of calls has been made to the Stourbridge-based UFO Research Midlands, UFORM, from those claiming to have witnessed the flying object in the sky. Witnesses say they spotted it in Halesowen, heading towards Stourbridge on Wednesday at around 7 p.m. UFORM is now appealing for anyone else who saw it to get in touch to help compile its X-Files. Steve Poole, UFORM chairman, said one man filmed more than 30 seconds of footage of the craft travelling in a westerly direction from Halesowen to Stourbridge. He said the object has been described as looking like a huge Dorito and had distinctive red lights on its underside, which moved position while the craft was flying. Another witness reported seeing it while looking out from the Lickey Hills towards the Sutton area of Birmingham. The witness says he watched the UFO through binoculars as it moved very quickly across the skyline. Two other independent collaborators came forward within hours of the sighting, according to UFORM. The craft was described as having either 3 red lights on the base, one at each corner, or flames ejecting from the same points. Residents thought that the sighting was a one-off. However, in early 2008, the local newspaper came back with another story. This time the Flying Dorito had been sighted just before Christmas, roughly a month after the original sighting. The newspaper report reads as follows. The strange, unexplained flying object was seen by residents in Wallows Wood off the Straits at around 6:15 p.m. on Tuesday. Householders described the object as looking like an arrowhead with 3 orange lights arranged in the shape of an isosceles triangle. Residents watched it move slowly across the sky before it disappeared from view in the direction of Wolverhampton. It is the second time the triangular object has been spotted flying over the Black Country in recent weeks. Scores of people contacted the Express and Star after seeing a UFO in the skies above Wensleydale and Dudley in December, and a local UFO group were inundated with calls and emails from onlookers who witnessed the object. Lower Gornal resident Peter Wasdale, aged 57, said he could not believe his eyes when he saw the object. The dog started barking, and when my wife went outside to find out what was going on, she saw the object in the sky and called me out to have a look, he said. There were 3 orangey lights in a triangle formation. They weren't shaped like an equilateral triangle, more like an isosceles triangle, and shaped like an old-fashioned arrowhead. I don't think it was a plane because we didn't hear any noise. My daughter and her boyfriend and the next door neighbours all saw them, and we watched them for about 15 minutes before they disappeared behind the trees. Birmingham International Airport spokesman John Morris said the airport took all reports of UFOs seriously. We had a couple of inquiries before Christmas following the first sightings over Hales Owen, he revealed. Less than 2 weeks after the second news article turned up, the Flying Dorito hit the headlines again. This time, 2 young girls witnessed the strange craft in the early evening of January 8th. The newspaper report goes as follows. 2 young Black Country girls have become the latest people to sight the mystery unidentified flying object, which has been dubbed the Dudley Dorito. Chelsea and Casey Bridges drew sketches of the UFO after spotting it while lying in bed at their grandmother's house in Chestnut Avenue on the Priory Estate in Dudley at about 9 p.m. on Tuesday the 8th of January. Chelsea, aged 7, and Casey, aged 9, were drifting off to sleep when they saw the object flying over Dudley Castle. The pair ran downstairs crying to tell their grandmother, Mrs. Marie Bridges, aged 61, what they had seen, and drew identical pictures of the strange craft. The sighting is the 3rd time the mysterious object had been seen in the skies over the Black Country in the space of a month. In early December, dozens of people saw a huge orange Dorito with 3 lights flying over Hales Owen, and a similar object was seen by people living in Lower Gornal shortly after Christmas. Householders in Wallows Wood described the object as looking like an arrowhead with 3 orange lights arranged in the shape of an isosceles triangle. The Express and Star has been bombarded with messages speculating what it could be. Mrs. Bridges said it was the girl's spooked reaction which made her realise something was not right. I was sat watching the TV and the girls were sleeping in my bed when they ran into the lounge looking scared, she said. They were both frightened and said they were scared something was coming to get them, and asked if they could stay downstairs with me because they didn't want to go back upstairs. I made them both draw a picture of what they saw. They both drew what looked like a diamond shape with lights, although Casey said it only had lights in each corner, and Chelsea said it had lights all around it. They're used to seeing planes and helicopters and they never bother with them, so it can't have been something like that. I joked them that it was E.T. going home, but it didn't make them laugh. I really believe it could be something from another planet. So, where Dudley is, you've got Birmingham Airport, you've also got East Midlands Airport. We also have in the area a lot of air traffic coming in and out of London, heading west for Ireland and the US. Aircraft are not unusual around here. We also have a couple of RAF bases, which we'll get to in a moment. The Dudley Dorito sightings continued until around 2012 when they appear to have tapered off. However, until that time, the stories kept pouring in and the new local newspaper continued to report them. In December 2011, it was reported that another resident, Gary Nook, spotted the flying triangle along with his family. They were on the car park of the Badger's Set pub, Hagley, when they saw the distinctive object fly overhead. The 52-year-old said that the UFO, a black triangle with white lights at each end, was flying at a low altitude from the direction of Birmingham. He said the object had turned silently in the air and they had eventually lost sight of it as it passed over the Clent Hills. The sighting occurred around 6:40 p.m. on Wednesday, and Mr. Nook immediately looked it up on the internet after returning home. He said the UFO bore a close resemblance to the Dudley Dorito first spotted over the skies of the Black Country a few years previously. He said, "At first I thought it could have been a jet, but no aircraft has these types of lights to my knowledge. It banked to one side and made no sound whatsoever, which was also strange. It was so low we lost sight of it over the tree line of the Clent Hills. When we got back, Jamie and I looked it up on the internet and saw the stories about the Dudley Dorito, and what we saw does bear a resemblance to it." Prior to the 2011 sighting, it was last seen in 2010 by Glyn Richards. The Black Country and surrounding area has a long history of not just UFO sightings, but pretty much every kind of paranormal, extraterrestrial, and just plain strange. Like I said, go back and listen to the episode on Cannock Chase. That one really does only scratch the surface of what's happening there. It's a very, very strange area, and if you get the chance, do go and visit. In June 2021, a bizarre sign appeared in Woodland stating that there had been 3 alien abductions in a week and that the local council were doing nothing. The sign was discovered in the Sedgley area of Dudley and read 3 alien abductions here in 1 week. When are the council going to do something? According to a Freedom of Information reply, the police force investigated 20 999 or 101 calls it received in relation to alleged UFO or alien sightings between 2015 and 2017. One woman writing on a UFO spotting website said that she allegedly saw an orange flickering ball in the sky. She added, "My immediate thought was that it looked like a plane on fire, but it clearly wasn't. It moved far too fast to be a plane. We live near the flight path, so we are used to seeing aircraft. I watched it for probably only a few seconds and saw as it travelled across the sky, not down, reduced in size and then disappeared." One man wrote on the same site about a white light which he claimed flew across the sky at a speed I have never seen before in any man-made technology. I didn't hear a boom as expected with such speed, just a faint hum. It was no meteor, it was very low and the light was very bright. I saw it for 3 seconds before it travelled across the entire sky and out of sight. A council officer was reported as saying, "There is something definitely going on with UFO activity in the West Midlands, but no one would ever go on record to confirm that. But as for alien abductions in Sedgley, not so sure about that." As expected, the sign was removed and the story, much like the Dudley Dorito, faded into obscurity. So were there any explanations for the strange craft that spent 6 years terrorising this tiny town? One theory is that it was an experimental aircraft similar to the speculative TR-3B triangular military aircraft. There have been dozens if not hundreds of sightings of such an aircraft, all of them with a single light in the centre or one at each corner. Both RAF Shrewsbury and RAF Cosford are close to Dudley, so could the military have been using the area for test flying new aircraft? RAF Bryce Norton is roughly 70 miles south of Dudley, and there are a number of other bases dotted in and around the Midlands area, so it's entirely possible that the area could have been used as a testbed for some strange, otherworldly looking craft. It's nearly 10 years since the last sighting of the Dudley Dorito. Will it return for an encore? We'll have to keep watching the skies. Thank you so much for listening. You can find Walker of Worlds podcast on Facebook and Instagram at Walker of Worlds podcast. If you'd like something unusual to read, please do check out my website at www.roswellpublishing.co.uk. Until next time, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for listening, and stay spooky.